Meet Rob Nelson, talk show host.
Because you got the 70s thing going there. I got someone's underwear.
Robert Kennedy, thanks for taking a minute. Simple question.
Tucker,
It's good to see you. Listen,
If you're a Bitcoin maximalist, you're Bitcoin forever.
I hate this central bank digital currency.
hey, I don't have all the answers, but together, I know we can find them.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Rob Nelson Live. Happy Monday. I hope y'all had a great Juneteenth. I can't believe Juneteenth is an actual holiday. It's nothing about black people or whatever. I mean, I have so many holidays. I'm like not a big holiday person. Like it's like everything shuts down. Most people like holidays. I don't. I mean, I like Christmas. Christmas is a fun holiday. I like Thanksgiving. Those are the two holidays, really. Easter, Juneteenth, President's Day, 4th of July, even. I know, 4th of July. Oh my God, the best holiday ever. It's fun. It's all right. It's a good barbecue day. I know Andy's going to think I'm very un American for saying that. And I like having like Memorial Day and I think Memorial Day is a good one, but most people don't even do the memorialing part, which is sad. So Andy's going to join me in a minute, and we're going to set some new rules for our conversation. Since it's my show, I get to set the rules, Landy. And that is, we're going to both say less in one time so we can interact more. And two is, I'm going to try at least, to shift the dynamic, because I think Landy and I agree more than we disagree. And I will say this about Landy. Landy understands. I mean, yes, he is a Bitcoin puppet avatar, which is its own thing. And obviously, if you've watched Landy's stuff when it comes to charts and Bitcoin, yeah, David Goxstein makes fun of him like it's like astrologers. But Nancy Reagan trusted the astrologer and did pretty good for Ronald Reagan. He's a genius when it comes to that stuff. But he's also pretty savvy when it comes to politics and international stuff, and has a kind of a shrouded, cloudy past that, whenever people do that, like they won't say who they work for, so you never know. Like I could just pretend like I was, high level operative for agencies and things I can't tell you about. And you never know. Because, I won't say, hey, I worked like in intelligence for the CIA, or, I was part of the NSA, or who knows. Like my record's really easy to follow, for better or worse. But he understands it really. But Landy and I share a conviction on, I think, a broad picture of things, including that much of the media distorts what's actually happening. And both sides. I mean, conservative media does too, to make their best case or their best arguments for what what they want to put out. Who knows who's driving that? Oh, Andy just said I'm Joseph Stalin now. Well, he's already starting hostile. But where we disagree, I think, is on what this whole situation with Iran, why we are where we are, and where we're really going to be. I have a much more domestic political view, having worked inside a White House, having spent years inside the actual electoral political side of things, watching how presidents and senators and Democratic and Republican Party machines operate. I think domestic politics played a role in the timing of all this and in the outcome of what we're trying to get. I also think it's okay to miscalculate a little. I think, I agree with Landy, and I'm going to let him in for a second. I'm just using a few minutes of my own show for myself. I think Landy's right when they never saw the Strait of Hormuz coming. Of course they did. I mean, the possibility of Iran trying to control the Strait of Hormuz has always been there. They've always had the ability, theoretically, to try and exercise leverage on it. They never have. They decided to now, after they got their asses kicked and their Navy sunk and their Air Force flattened and a lot of their missile launchers wiped out and their two tiers of their regime eliminated. They decided to, desperate, play the Hormuz card. Worked out better for them than I think they thought, and perhaps better for them than we thought. So again, I'm not going to suggest we don't ultimately have the ability to take back control of it. I just think they threw a wedge card in there, that and firing ballistic missiles at neighboring states they figured out if we can just disrupt enough stuff, it doesn't really matter how much damage we're actually doing. If we can just get everybody scared, the markets will be rattled. Western economies operate on markets and polls and voter sentiments. Democracies do. Markets, world markets, U.S. stock markets, the price of oil, what's through the roof. It's an easy political weapon, gas prices. They used it against Biden. They'll use it against Trump. I think at some level, domestic politics played a role in this, as sort of an inevitable discovery of Iran's sort of willing to take any amount of pain rather than surrender. That doesn't mean I'm happy with where we are. It also doesn't mean I don't see a possible good outcome, but that's where Landy and I are going to get into this. So I'm bring Landy in now, having set my mouse up, and there's Landy. There's Bitcoin Monkey with his hand up the butt. Hi, Landy.
How you doing, Rob?
I'm good.
I,
So listen, so this time we're not gonna go on like, that was my little thing, and I'll let you have yours, but we're gonna keep it a little shorter so we can have a little more back and forth, so we don't lose our audience in the process. So I'm gonna start with a couple queries to you, and I want your simple answer before your detailed explanation, right?
sure.
So my first one is, would you acknowledge that the way that this memo of understanding, as they've set it up, could be troubling to certain people because it doesn't explicitly address what they're going to do with nukes. It just puts it on a 60-day talk. It only limits them to in the strait for 60 days, which the caveat, right, but we could always enforce our own will on it if we had to. And then it puts
Mhm.
Lebanon in the first paragraph, which means they're going to play Hezbollah to irritate the Israelis, and the Israelis will react, and that will be an excuse for Iran to say, see, now we're not negotiating anymore. And as long as they get their oil flowing, which they're doing, their tankers are moving, those sanctions lifted, and some money, it's a win for them. And some people would go, they probably won't follow through, but they'll get enough benefit along the way that it's worth it for them to buy some time, get some money, and then deal with what comes next and hope maybe politics in the US makes it hard for Trump to do it again. Is that a fair assessment without going into the details of
Um,
other underlying
I
things?
I think that there's a lot of nuance there that misses because it's very much placing them in the driver's seat when they are not, is my take on
Mhm.
it. Mainly because you can lift sanctions and they can move some oil. This is in part right to completely collapse their entire oil industry so they don't go full shut in. Um, I think that that's a humanitarian disaster, side of things. So there's that aspect of it. Also, any w I think the Treasury's been pretty clear, and Besant has been pretty clear that they mapped out their entire monetary infrastructure already, which is one of the reasons why we were able to do extra seizures through third parties, and exercise those sanctions and have them stick because we weren't able to for many, many years. Um, and if they violate this, this agreement and they don't follow through, right? You just seize it again, right? How much are they really going to get out in cash? Where are they going to go with it? They have so few options, and they've lost their biggest advocates, right? Russia doesn't want to have anything to do with it. China doesn't want to have anything to do with it. They got their own stuff going on.
Right.
Um,
I see the point.
So
Why why
I view this as a good thing, for the Iranian people just to get a little bit of relief. Now, granted, that money's not going to them, but you don't want to destroy that
well, that's what I
infrastructure
was
for
about to say.
decades, right? 'Cause,
Well, I don't know. I don't know because they're underneath again, I feel like my fundamental issue with all of this is not that I don't think they've thought it out well and that Vice President Vance doesn't make great arguments for what their steps are and the opportunity this allows, and that, if they play the game right, this could be a whole new world. I just fundamentally think the Iranian regime doesn't want a whole new world. I don't think they have any intention of ultimately letting us get to their
well,
nukes. I don't think they have any intention of stopping funding. They put Lebanon in the first paragraph. Like, meanwhile, Hezbollah fires like rockets every day into Israel, just taunting Israel to fire back, knowing that we'll slap Israel's hand, and because Trump wants this deal, and they
well,
think it'll wedge us.
I mean, but look, Iran is not the only player that has funded Hezbollah. All right, Israel has done the same, right? These proxy groups have been funded by both the West and the East and Iran, and it is such a complex cluster fuck. Excuse my language, but it really is of self interest and anti-Western interest and anti-Eastern interest, and in the entire region has been this political and military football that there has to be some sort of adult in the room that says that this needs to stop. Now, the United States attempting to do this is the first time in our lifetimes that we've seen anyone try to tackle this problem. And so in that regard, look, everyone's making this MOU out to be something that it really isn't. It is just a path to a possible final
I
agreement,
agree with that. I agree with
right?
that. I have a problem. Yeah, no, I agree with that. It is just what you said. I have a problem when you say Iran's not in the driver's seat. I don't know who's in the driver's seat. I know who has the military might. I also know that what Iran showed was they don't really need a conventional Air Force and Navy to do the disruption they want to do. They need money, they need their little speedboats, and they need missile launchers. And they do have a lot of ballistic missiles because they can reach
Yeah.
Israel, they can reach the Gulf states, and they can mess with the
They can
strait.
reach London.
That's
They can
pretty
reach
much all
London
they
with
need
some of
to
them.
do.
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, they can reach London with some of those. They proved that, right?
Well,
And
now
that's something that Trump
supposedly,
said
right?
early
I don't
on.
know if that, yeah, let's see if that missile actually makes it. But the Iranians'
Yeah.
technology is pretty good. I mean, it's not like they're like they're North Korea.
Well,
So
well,
I worry that we're not going after their ballistic. What worries me most, Landy, is not even stuff you say. It's stuff the president says when he says, "Well, it's their money after all. Like they ultimately should get it, right?" It's like, no, you were the one who said, "Why did we give them money? Who's care? You don't. So what? It's the drug cartel's money. They don't get it. It's their neighbors have missiles. They should too. Their
well,
neighbors aren't evil terrorist regimes that will
he
use
also
those
said,
missiles.
well, you remember, over
No,
the
I'm just saying,
weekend,
take those
it-
two. Just take those two statements.
sure,
You've
sure,
got to at least acknowledge those
but
two statements
but you also
are
have to
complete
acknowledge
opposites of what
everything
he
else
said
he said.
originally.
You also have to acknowledge everything else. If you're gonna be nuanced in one area, you have to be nuanced in the other, right?
Fair enough, but
So,
let's just address that nuance. Let's
well,
just address that nuance. That is a
let's address
complete
what happened over the
contradiction of what
weekend.
he said forever.
Let's address what happened over the weekend, right? You had all of these media reports because right now we have the Israelis who hate every part of this are sending every single one of their NGO paid shills out there to astroturf everything. You've got you've got European nation NGOs working through US think tanks that are doing the same thing, trying everything they can to sway public interest against it. You had the, oh my God, they walked out, the deal's off, all this stuff, and then it's back on, then it's off, then it's on, then it's a, and what did Trump say in the middle of all of that is like, look, you ain't going back, right? He made a threat. Like, hey, if you we'll just bomb you and good luck getting back home because essentially he threatened them like we're gonna keep you there or we will take you. You're you're we don't care about the international optics. We will we'll take you all on and there's nothing you can do about it. Look, he can be one of two ways. He can either be your best friend or your worst enemy. And it just depends on what's going on in that particular moment, right?
Yeah,
What has so I don't trust what here's what I
you
wanted to
give,
say
but
about
you
that.
okay, say it because you give
Here
Trump way too much credit for like
no, you don't give him
having no
enough.
self-interest in this. No, he gets a lot of credit. He's the only president in 50 years who had the guts to do what he did. And I will
Well,
give
you
him credit
what
for
I'm
that.
saying is you're not giving him credit for actually understanding the dynamics of what he's putting out there when he's saying these things. And you know just as well as I do what's happening in Iran, right? And that is that there is a bunch of factions that are not happy with this deal in Iran, and they're all IRGC. They do not want any American dollars coming in. They don't want anything because they know that once the United States gets their hooks in you, you end up like Venezuela. But
Yeah.
here's what I would say to everything is believe none of what you see and half of what you hear because this is still nothing has substantially changed with the exception of the actions of lifting the blockade and allowing them to actually export oil. So,
I am beginning to move and beginning to lift their ability to access $20 billion in their funds.
well, they haven't actually done that yet. That's we
They
know that
started. They
people are
started.
claiming.
They've started the process, and Secretary Vance did. I mean, Vice President Vance and Secretary Bessent both acknowledged that yes, we are planning. And that's when Trump said it is their money after all.
But what did they tell you? What did they say specifically? They are going to basically allow them to use some of their money to do what? get agricultural imports from the United States.
And you know what, Landy? If that's true, I'm not saying they didn't say
We're
that.
directing where their money goes instead of their surrogates in London and Qatar.
So this is an issue that I'm not convinced and I'm not willing to believe till I see it. I don't know how much we can maybe we can, maybe we can't actually control exactly where that money gets spent. I get it. We can certainly not control it at all. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, what? We take the money and we pay it to US soybean farmers? They never touch the money?
Well, I
When
mean, that could,
we just
yeah,
take
because if
their money and make the
you can't
transaction
have
for them?
you can't have it one way and not the other, right? You can't say, well, their money's sanctioned, so they can't touch it. Well, then who's preventing it? Well, it would be us. So then if they're going to get a release of funds, you think that we're not going to be the ones at the table directing where that goes? So if we say, yeah, you can use X amount of dollars, but we're taking it and we're taking this X amount of dollars out of that to get agricultural products, and that's what you're going to do. You're going to import our agricultural products. Then you can't say on one hand, oh, we've sanctioned it so they don't have access to it. Now we're giving them access to it. Well, that doesn't mean it's just like they're signing over a blank check or sending
No,
pallets
that's
of
not what I
cash.
said. What I said
No,
is
no, I'm not
I
saying
asked
you.
a
I'm
very
just saying to people in general.
yeah,
In
but I
general.
buy the idea, but I wouldn't again, I do not have full here's the difference between us, or at least publicly the way you say it. I don't trust our government not to be lying either. I worked for a president. I worked around his top people. He was
Yep.
no different than other presidents. They lie, they say what they have to say. Trump changed his story. I'm not saying he doesn't understand what's happening. He changed his story because his initial goals weren't all reached. Iran dug in their heels, and he realized that energy markets were tanking. My theory is prices were too high in the US. And he realized a point you've made, we may have a shot at winning the midterms. The Republicans could win the midterms, but not if I'm carrying this albatross around my neck of high energy prices and Iran kicking and screaming over there. Let me get out of this. Let me make the best deal possible and win the midterms. And we'll figure it out later. As you all say, we can always come back and deal with them later. Do I think he understands what he's doing? Yes. I also think he understands that it's a complete 180 to go from saying they shouldn't have ballistic missiles to saying, well, their neighbors have them, so they should too. They shouldn't have any money. Oh, well, it is their money. He's saying that because he's trying to justify what they're doing. Why he's justifying it, I think, is he wants to save the midterms and ultimately not give them too much, so do it in a controlled way. But that's far cry from saying, we're not going to let you fund proxy terrorists. We're not going to let you,
Well,
Lebanon's in the first paragraph of the fucking agreement. It's like, why is Lebanon
because
in this
Lebanon
agreement?
isn't just proxy terrorists. There's way more going on in Lebanon,
No, I
and
know, but
it's
I'm saying, why is it even part of this agreement? Because
because
of Israel.
Because Israel and and the Lebanese government haven't come to the table to solve the problem. And one of the things that I think, I've said this to you before, when it comes to the top level leadership from the IRGC, most of them don't live their lives the way that their followers live their lives. They're not as hardcore as the followers that they've made. So when you look at the way that they operate in a world in which they have to do give and take. Even when they were dealing with the Chinese and Russians, right? They have to do give and take. And if the United States desires an outcome where Lebanon and Israel are not having this particular issue, then you can now utilize your adversary to take care of an adversary, right? So this is where I think that as this plays out, I think that it's starting to show Israel's
Yeah.
hand in this regard. But I wanted to go back a step
Well,
for a moment when it
well, that's a
revolves
whole.
around this
Hold on.
particular issue. Well, I wanted to go back for a second because one of the things that we're talking about is what it's this deal or what could potentially become a deal. The only way that they're going to get to a deal, and I think you agree with me, is that if they allow for the spin down and destruction of that nuclear material, right? That is what this deal ultimately hinges on. I don't care like all of the different stuff about the deal. What it ultimately hinges on, to push it to a final agreement, which that's all this is a period to negotiate to a final agreement, is the nuclear capabilities.
You missed, yeah, but you missed what I said to start with, which is if that's true, then we shouldn't give them a single thing till we get there. You don't get any sanctions relief. You don't get to ship your oil. You don't get to make a dollar. This is so far from unconditional surrender. And again, I also believe old school. I think a lot of times you lose wars with certain enemies because you do stop. I think the South could have won the Civil War had they kept pushing up to Washington. I think Hitler could have won World War II had he not stopped Goebbels and what's his name, when he did, right? I think sometimes you lose wars. I mean, Winston Churchill was not going to stop, right? I mean, Lincoln was not going to stop, right? Lincoln was not popular. Lincoln was, he was like, how many people, 50,000 people in Gettysburg alone. I mean, how many, 1 million people out of a population of 24 million died in that war? Lincoln didn't want to make peace with the South. He wanted unconditional surrender. Arguing, Chase in his own cabinet was like, let them just have their own little thing over there. He's like, no. And it worried that within Iran, you can't take any kind of a conditional outcome. You have to just smush this regime into the ground or they will find a way to sprout up. You can tell me I'm wrong, but history.
So then how would you go about doing that, Rob? How would you go about doing that then?
I would have kept our foot on their throat economically, not giving them a single ounce of breathing room until they let us in to get the nukes. We can negotiate all you want. We'll stop pummeling we'll stop shooting at you if you don't shoot. We won't go after your bridges, your infrastructure.
How do you know that
you
they weren't at that point, and that's why they came to the table?
They were close. We know they're not because otherwise they would have given in and given us what we wanted. Instead, we gave them.
Okay,
now you can start trading their oil. Why can they?
Here's
my question.
Okay,
why can they trade? Hold on. Here's my question. Why can they? What's the rationale to let them sell anything until we have what you just said we want, which is so that they can't stall, they can't use 60 days, they can't use Hezbollah shooting at Israel and Israel shooting back to go, oh, well, now we're not doing it anymore. Now another 60 days. Why give them any breathing room till we get the one thing we want, especially because we don't know that they'll give it. They promised this 15 years ago and they didn't deliver on it.
Okay. Well, this is very different than 15 years ago.
10 years ago, whatever.
10 years ago, 15 years ago.
No, but I'm saying their promises aren't very valid. So
we've been negotiating with them for 50. All right. So, I mean, we've been at about 50 years of negotiations.
Yeah, but you're not answering my question.
So,
why not
yes,
push
I am.
to unconditional surrender?
Because you don't know, and neither do I, nor does anyone on the internet know who's actually in charge. We know who the faces are right now. They can't even show their own people their Ayatollah. All right. They still have not shown, he has not shown face.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't even know if he's alive. Yes, it does. Because you don't know who they're dealing with.
To do that.
Yeah, well, okay, the United States clearly.
By your logic, if you don't know who's in charge, if nobody knows who's in charge,
we don't. As the people.
Yeah, but you use that argument whenever you use that argument.
No, it's you know that it's a valid. You know, okay, you know the region. You know the mosaic defense that they employ to begin with.
It doesn't change my calculation of suffocate who's ever in charge till they can't breathe anymore.
You don't know that we get. Okay, so my point to you is you don't know that those haven't been suffocated out. Okay, so
then then give us the enriched uranium week.
What did I tell you on Friday? I told you that
Iran
there was
just said, you always dismiss any comments that come from any official sources, but Iran's own government and its flagship newspaper said, we never said we're going to let U.S. and we're going to let the international nuke experts in. We never said that. Now, did they? Didn't they? I don't know. Either way, why give them any breathing room till they've given us the thing we want. You're saying, well, maybe they said they would. Well, then give it to us, and then we'll let
I
you
didn't
breathe.
say
Until then,
no,
you
no, no.
suffer.
First of all, you're putting words in my mouth. I said to you on Friday, I said that for as far as we know, they have agreed to allow IAEA and
Yeah.
DOE nuclear inspectors to come in.
Yes, and Vance said
JD
that.
Vance 2 days later confirmed what I said on Friday, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
we know that
I agree.
they have officially, and this isn't just, it doesn't matter what the internal propaganda regime says when you have we don't know what is true, is my point to you. We don't also know who's putting that out within the regime. They are so fractured that they have leaders within leaders. You had a video of one of the generals out there that was kicking around over the weekend saying, I control the strait. There's nothing anyone can do to stop me because I have
I know.
control of X
Randy,
number of
all this,
missiles.
I agree with you, but all this only makes my
So
point to me stronger, which is,
it doesn't.
therefore, you don't know if the people you're negotiating with ultimately are the ones that can
They
pull the trigger on anything.
Yes, we do, because they are the ones that can have control over accounts. They can show, and that was the whole point for the original ceasefire. Remember, during the ceasefire, they were saying basically the faction has to prove to us that they actually have control of anything. That's the point.
So you're
Is you
never
have to
gonna.
see.
So you're never
No,
there. I decided there is no scenario where you will not argue somehow we got the thing. So when Iran based on this,
no, no,
when
no, no, no,
it,
no, no.
I'll make a prediction.
You're
Within 40
misrepresenting
days,
my point.
no, it's my opinion
You're-
from what you said. When Iran bails on this temporarily, because Hezbollah shoots at Israel enough times that Israel pummels them, and then Iran says, "Oh look, Israel violated the ceasefire in Lebanon." Now I go, well, Hezbollah's been poking them to do it since the minute that the MOA was announced. They like 100 strikes in 2 days, small strikes, less. And Trump called them small. Who cares if they're small? So somebody just shot small little missiles into California and didn't really kill anybody. We'd be like, you're done. So they will provoke Israel, use Israel's provocation response as a reason to stall in these talks and to say we're not doing anything. Meanwhile, they're shipping oil, buying more time.
Maybe
If that
Israel should
happens,
stop
we
sending
then go,
Hezbollah money, huh? Maybe Israel should stop
okay, well,
sending Hezbollah money because
that's
they're still
another
doing it.
can of worms that is somewhat hard
Yeah,
to prove.
well,
And that's where you're now
here's my
talking. You
point.
don't actually know what happened.
Yeah,
Look,
yo, no,
Israel
we
has every
know.
right to do what they're doing, Randy.
Oh, okay. They
Israel
have
is
every
surrounded
right
by
to
enemy.
they have every right to fund the exact people that have caused death and
No, that's not
destruction
what
in
I said.
another nation and
I'm
continues to
saying
fire
there's a look.
missiles into their
There,
own country of
there's
their
a
own citizens.
there is a war machine in every country. Eisenhower said it about our
Yep.
country. There's an industrial war complex that wants to keep wars alive, and I'd argue that happened in our own country. You
Okay.
know, there. But that said, fundamentally, Israel is a sole democratic state surrounded for decades by hostiles that have not
When was the
only
last time they
fought with
had an
them but
election,
wanted
Rob?
their extinction. What?
When was the last time they had an
Well,
election?
they have they do. It's a parliament,
Mm-mm.
so they have when there's a
Mm-hmm.
question of the government. So you're basically
Mm-hmm.
on board now. You've become on board the Israel's wrong to want to protect its
No,
borders,
no, 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 no.
which
I have
wrong to run to war with
Okay, well,
Lebanon. I mean,
let me explain
with
my
Iran.
position. Can I explain my position?
Yeah,
My
but you
position
just
is
avoid the core piece.
no, I didn't avoid the core piece. You want to paint me into a corner of saying this is good, this is bad, when you know for a fact that you don't have enough information, I don't have enough information to make a determination on whether this is good or bad. You're going by the objective perception that you are seeing put out there via statements in the middle of a negotiation period that has a goal of trying to find a final resolution of no
Well,
nuclear
all right, I have an
weapons. That's
easy answer
ultimately
for
the
that.
goal.
I have an easy answer for that. If I'm wrong and you're right about that, I'm not saying know things and you know things that others that we don't know everything. I'm not disagreeing with that. Then fundamentally, there is no reason. Well, I have a hard time with all this with you, Landy, is you don't see the president's complete 180s, which he does whenever he gets in a quandary that he doesn't like, as not consistent. Like, you can't tell the world for 10 years that the single thing that has to happen is Iran shouldn't have ballistic missiles. They should not get any
No,
funding, and they should
he
not
did
have
not say
nukes.
ballistic
And then
missiles. You
make it,
literally
then
changed it. He said no nuclear weapons for 10 years, for 30
no, he
years,
said no. He
30 years.
literally, come on, Andy. I can pull up the things where even in his campaign this time, trashing Obama for giving a single dollar to Iran, and that they
Because of
absolutely
enriched
can't have ballistic
uranium,
missiles.
because it led
What?
to the enriched uranium. The whole issue has always revolved around nuclear material.
Well, and no, and funding terrorism and ballistic missiles.
Those are ancillary
Iran's
to
just
having
as
nuclear
dangerous.
material.
Iran's just as dangerous in some ways with ballistic missiles because they can
You
wreak
know what you
havoc.
remind me of in this regard is you are so stuck on wanting to be about other things instead of the core issue. And the core issue has always been, at least since they started their nuclear
I'm,
materials enrichment, has been that they should not have had the ability and the funding in order to create the
yeah,
nuclear
yep.
material. That was
I
the
agree with you,
original
and
problem.
I agree with you. And Andy, so we're going to agree here before we move on. We're going to agree here. And one of the reasons Obama got so heavily criticized was he allowed Iran access to money without guaranteeing first that they couldn't build a nuclear weapon. Now, you're saying they're doing it differently.
Ooh.
No, they're
No,
not.
I'm not
They
saying
are
that. I'm
lifting
not saying,
sanctions before they are lifting
oh
sanctions
God.
before we
All
have
right.
a guarantee on the nukes. So come
Okay.
on, get
First
the
of
nukes,
all,
and then it's all the sanctions you want.
these sanctions that first of all, if you go and you look at and read what Scott Bessent was talking about, these are sanctions that only were locked up during the war. These funds were found in Qatar. They go
No, not
through
the
to
funds. I'm
China,
talking about
and
the
there's other.
waivers on their oil. That was not only during the war. They're selling
Well,
oil they
yeah, but
couldn't
we've
sell.
yeah, but I would say that that is a good thing for their people in general, and I'm talking about the
Yeah, now
regular
suddenly it's
Persian
about their
people.
people. You know what would be a good thing for their people? To suffer as much as they have to suffer to get rid of this regime, because this regime
Cool.
fucks their people
Yeah.
over. They killed 40,000 of them for
Do you know what the
protesting.
food situation is like there in
Yeah,
Iran
it's
for them
horrible
right
from
now?
what I understand. Yeah.
Do you
You know what?
understand how many people
Yeah.
are actually regular
Yep.
Persians
Yep.
are suffering
Yep.
right now,
Yep.
right?
And you know what, Landy? That to me, that's a red herring. They are going to suffer
I
and
know.
be fed. Patrick Henry
Cool.
said, "Give me liberty or give me death." They're going to
Yeah,
suffer
but that
by
they're not
being
the United
semi-fed
States.
while their government
They're not the
destroys
United
their
States.
people. What?
Cool. They're not the United States. So and they will never be the United States.
I
So
didn't say they're the United States.
the difference is, give me liberty or give me death is not something that that
No, it's
is
just a philosophical
enforceable
principle.
there. It is a philosophical
Well,
principle, but it does not.
I'm
They
saying,
still have a very large Muslim population there, right?
I know.
Um, and one of the things is the large Muslim population that does support the regime, the theocracy, is not happy about any of this because they don't want to be infected and then have and then lose their power over time.
Landy,
But
last
my
week
point
you
to you is
acknowledged that
stop
this isn't
interrupting
good for
me.
the Iranian
Stop
people.
interrupting me, please, so that I can actually get the point out. Because the point that I'm trying to make to you is this: that the goal I've said, and I've been very consistent since the very beginning with you, with David from day one, this was never a regime change operation. This was going in to clean up what was already established is that we hit and destroyed the actual nuclear sites, but that doesn't mean that the material is gone. This is now a cleanup operation. You do it one of two ways. You can put boots on the ground, you get guys in there to go clean it up, but now you have to be in hostile enemy territory with a very proficient enemy, and we already know their tactics and how they operate. So that's
I
kind of
agree.
out of the question. We knew that they weren't going to do that. So the other thing is you just bomb them until they come to the table. And they're at the table now. So what is the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is to get rid of the nuclear material. If they it here's what I'll ask you then. here's what Obama for the I did not disagree with anything that Obama put in the actual resolution. All of that sounds great. Everything that Obama wanted to do sounded good. I would have been like, yes. The only piece that I was ever critical about with JCPOA was we didn't have military to back up enforcement because they were never going to actually let IAEA in, and they didn't let IAEA in. So here's the
Yeah.
difference. Here's how I view it. And this is something that you just have to accept. The way that I view it is that now we are in a position where we have severely damaged their military and political infrastructure. All right. Now they're back at the table. We want inspectors in. We want to spin down that program. We want to obtain the nuclear material. Okay. So those are the goals. We now have the military there that is not leaving. That is the enforcement mechanism that we were missing under JCPOA. I would have been for JCPOA if Obama had the military parked at their fucking front door. The fact of the matter is, it had no teeth because the military wasn't parked at their door.
Yeah, I hear you. And this is where you and I are just going to fundamentally disagree. And I don't think there's any changing your mind any more than there's changing an anti-Trump person's mind or a a Biden person's mind.
What do
Um,
you do you
I
do
have,
you
I don't,
what do you
I do
disagree
not
with?
think, I absolutely think there is no scenario short of, Iran going off the fucking rails militarily with their little mini military in the strait or whatever, or their ballistic missiles at the neighboring countries, where Trump brings the military back in. He has zero intention. It has wrecked him in the polls. There are 60%. It's the first time in history that more people identify as independent or Republican or Democrat. 71% of Trump's own MAGA base in most polling, 60 to 70%, think he should have finished the job, right? Like, should have gone for regime change. But nobody wants military action anymore. Nobody wants oil to go back up. Nobody wants the instability. And it will ruin the Republicans in the midterm. So until after October, we're not coming back in. It ultimately maybe, but if they bail and suddenly go, well, we're not letting him in yet because Israel did blank. Trump's not going to be like, he threatens to bomb him. He's been threatening to bomb him every other day. And it's like, he's not going to. Like, then just bomb him. Just take a week and bomb the fuck out of him again to show him a lesson. Like, did I not teach you the first time? Let me show you next week what we mean, and bomb the crap out of them. They'll still come back to the table if you're right. They don't have any choice if you're right, but to come back to the table. They can't go, well, now we're not coming back to the table. Well, yeah, you are, because we just bombed you again, and we'll bomb you again. Like, of course.
I'm gonna bring you back to last year. I'm gonna bring you back to last year, Rob. Remember before the tariff announcements, Trump will never implement them. Then he implemented them. You remember before
and then he removed them.
No, he did not remove them. He negotiated down.
I mean, then he negotiated.
This is where I agree with David. This is where I agree fully with David. Is Trump will ask for outlandish things and then meet somewhere in the middle, and he's always done
Meet
this.
in the middle. Absolutely, it's how he does business.
But he still kept those tariffs on and used them as a tool, and people said he would never do it. Right? So then
he didn't say he would never do it.
No, that was the complete talk.
No,
right
I'm
after
saying I didn't say that, and it's a different calculation.
But here's
when and why.
Okay, let's go a little bit further down in history. There was also, Israel is bombing Iran. There's Trump will never get involved, and then Midnight Hammer, okay, got involved. Then there was, we sailed the Pacific Fleet and surrounded Venezuela and started picking off drug traffickers. We'll never go after Venezuela. We don't have the balls. He doesn't have the balls to go after Maduro. And then we plucked him out of bed in the middle of the night. And then we started to build up the military in the Middle East. And you could see it all coming, and everyone was like, nah, he's going to chicken out. There's no way he actually bombs Iran. And then he did it. So how many more times do we need to say, "Oh yeah, he's not going to do it," and then he does it?
Well,
This is, I mean,
well,
look, you the evidence itself points in the opposite
well, I can
direction.
make equal evidence the other way that he doesn't have. There'd be no reason to change his tune. There'd be. It's very simple. There's
Why?
no
You're just
reason to
hinging it
give
on
Iran
polls.
one. Landy, there's no reason to give Iran $1, one single dollar, not sell 1 ounce of oil till we get what we want. You don't give the enemy that you're saying is unconditionally surrender anything till after they unconditionally surrender. Then you can give them all they want. The fact that we are negotiating with giving them stuff, and now it's the argument, oh, well, they'll use that money. No, the money they're getting from their oil exports, they're not using to buy U.S. goods and services. They're using for whatever the fuck they want. We're letting them have an airline, a breathing line, before they've given us what we want. The only reason to do that is because we want this thing to get settled, and that's a political reason. I don't think Trump lacks balls. I think he realized, I don't want to tank the midterms. I want to have a majority for the rest of my term. And to do that, I've got to keep this thing on cool. And bombing them won't do that because they'll just leave the table and not come back.
You know, Trump said something interesting, and you're gonna see what I'm driving at when I get there. Um, he said something interesting, that he's not a fan of how Israel has handled things in Lebanon. He thinks Syria would do a better job. Do you ever
I
think that
know.
you would ever, in your entire life, think Syria?
Well,
Syria?
yeah, because the guy who
Hmm.
runs the country
Weird.
was a giant militant.
Oh, interesting. Did we invade their country? Did we sanction them? We bombed them plenty of times.
Yeah.
But you know what ended up happening is Western influences started working their way into Syria, and then all of a sudden, you had you
Well,
had the government get overthrown with a more pro-Western government. Isn't that interesting that that happened? And
yeah.
yet that was a hotbed of
Syria wasn't.
terrorism,
Yeah.
and there was no
Syria
way
wasn't.
back.
Syria wasn't Iran. Nobody's
No,
Iran.
no. My point to you is, do you understand how things in the Middle East have been evolving?
Yeah, I also think you just simply, I don't see you ever acknowledging that US politics plays a role in this. For whatever reason, certain people see Trump as if he doesn't read the tea leaves and doesn't care what the polls say. He absolutely cares what the polls say. He cares if he loses the midterms. If they stay in a military conflict with Iran, energy prices will stay high. They will lose the midterms badly. He doesn't want to lose it. It's not worth it. Now, he hopes he gets the outcome of no nukes, and he can always later on go back and bomb them if they go there. But for now, let's just kind of get out. Otherwise, again, why, Landy, you don't answer my one single question. If Iran's so backed up against a wall, simply say, give us what we want, clear the strait, give us access to the nukes. And when you do, we will open your ability to again make money and trade. Why would you do it on the signing of an agreement? Because they wouldn't agree to do it any other way. Iran wouldn't agree unless we gave them something to even come to the table and talk. They would be like, bomb us some more. Bomb us some more. We're not coming to the table unless you give us something. You don't give an enemy who's unconditionally surrendering anything till you get what you want. You're saying we haven't gotten what we want, we will, then we shouldn't give them anything. Or they're not unconditionally surrendering. They actually have enough leverage to go, we won't talk about ending this if you don't give us something. And we had to give them something. That's not a crazy, far-fetched notion.
No, it's a choice. The choice is, you either comply or we bomb the ever loving shit out of you. We can be nice to you and we can let you pass oil through the
Why?
strait.
Why would you do that? Why would you do that with a terrorist regime who is literally responsible for killing more people, disrupting more? Why would you give them anything till you get what you want, unless you had to? Would you give Hitler something in exchange before he surrenders? No, we nuked Japan so that they would unconditionally surrender. We didn't go, well, we'll give you a Marshall Plan if you'll basically agree to talk. You
We
don't
also
give
didn't
your
have,
enemy any breathing room
yeah,
till
it's
they.
comparing, well, it's also comparing apples to oranges when you're considering the global economy and the effects on it. So,
Yeah, I agree. They know that. That's my point. Iran knows they can wreak havoc
but
on the
that's
global
no, no,
economy.
no.
And
It's
Trump
not
doesn't
even
want
that
to
they
do
can
that.
wreak havoc. It's just that it's not even them. It's us, and that's what you're missing. You keep blaming. You keep saying that it's them. It's them. It's them. It's us. It's us. It's us, and that's what you
No,
don't get. Because
well,
if we start going fully operational again, do you think that then everything is all copacetic and everything continues to run as if it was? That everything's fine now? Oh, they're just gonna bomb them and the world
no, of
economy is
course
gonna
not, Andy.
accept
You're
it?
making my point. That's why we're
No.
not going to do it. We're
My
not going to
my
do
point
it
to you
because it
is
would wreak
my
havoc
point to
on the
you
global economy. That's my point, and Iran knows that. Otherwise, we could have them
so
at the table giving us whatever we want. They know they can extract concessions because our only alternative is to bomb them. And if we bomb them, we fuck the world economy. Could we bomb the shit out of them? Of course we could. And
and your
eventually they'd have to
contention
collapse.
but your contention is that we won't, and that's where you're wrong.
Well, we can place a gentleman's wager on it. I don't see it happening, no matter how many violations Iran makes in this, except if they start like launching ballistic missiles at like Qatar and the Kuwait and stuff
Iran
like that.
hasn't done anything so far since the MOU
I know.
has gone into
I'm saying
effect. They
they're
haven't
gonna
done
use
anything.
Hezbollah to provoke Israel. Israel's gonna respond. They're gonna back out
But
of the talks,
um,
come back and
I,
forth,
I
back and
have a
forth.
I have a question to ask you, and see, this is because this is where I vehemently disagree with you. Hezbollah has been funded by both Israel and Iran and China and Russia. So is
Yeah.
Hezbollah really controlled by Iran?
Well,
Iran doesn't
the
even
proof,
operate in that
yeah,
way. Everybody
first
is
of all,
independent.
now you're just saying, if you want to use the you
No,
don't
I'm
know thing,
not.
you don't know how much money Israel's given Hezbollah. And yes, Hezbollah is controlled by Iran. Almost every major U.S. and international Western intelligence agency says Hezbollah is controlled by Iran. I guess they could all be in cahoots to just say it. But yes, Hezbollah has been controlled by Iran. They're an extension of the Iranian regime. They've
They are
coordinated with them.
classified. Counterterrorism
I
has
mean, you know,
classified them as an extension of Iran, but they have gotten, and counterterrorism task force has also declared officially that they have received funds from Iran, Israel, China, Russia, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq. They
okay.
are
So
literally
one doesn't change the
internationally
other.
funded.
One doesn't change the other for me. It doesn't change the other,
Well,
Landy.
here's the difference.
I'm not, no,
Here's
I'm
the
not, no,
difference
no,
is
no, no, I don't care if Israel literally, I don't care if the Democrats fund every single extreme mega person so that that person will lose in a general election. I care about what Hezbollah does, and I care about what's happening to our country, and I care about that. And I don't think this deal right now is good for the U.S. I think after 50 years, it is time to put the foot on this
it's not
regime
even a
and
deal
suffocate
yet.
it.
That's the
Suffocate it.
problem. See,
We're,
you're
we're already,
you
there's
want
no deal to be made with them. I don't want to make a deal with them. I want to suffocate them.
well,
They
here
don't
you
honor
go.
their deal.
There's no
They're not going to
deal.
suddenly
You already
honorate their
have
new deal.
you already have a situation where there is no deal. There is no final deal.
No, but in
There's
60 days,
nothing
they're supposed to
substantial
be.
that has happened outside of us saying, "Yeah, you can move oil." And that
Well, that's
is
substantial.
infuriating you to the
It
point
is.
that you can't make a
Landy,
rational decision. You can't make a rational argument about anything else.
well, that's no, I can make a lot of rational arguments about a lot else. That is to me a logical fallacy that you would let them have oil unless you had to. Because that's money they can use for whatever they want. So that's not money we control how they spend it. You only do that if you need to do that to get them to the table.
Do
Why do
you
you need to
believe
get them to the table?
do you believe that the other Gulf states have no role to play in what is going on in the negotiations? Yes or no?
I think they have some, but I think ultimately Trump is, I believe deeply, and time will prove me right or wrong. Trump is playing to his domestic political interests right now. And he is worried
So
badly
you
that they are
you
going to
are
get
in the
hammered in
camp
the midterm.
that this is all about the midterms. And see, that's where I fundamentally disagree with you because the midterm polling was already shifting in the way in the positive direction for Republicans anyway, as
Somewhat,
we
but high, but yes, but again, this is where, again, you're just going to disagree with me on everything, Landy. But the
No,
truth
I'm
is,
not disagreeing with you on everything.
there's no political analyst out there who do polling who say if energy prices remain high into the midterms, somehow this is going to be good for the party that controls all the government.
And it's not
Like,
what I
no,
said.
it's not.
You're completely misrepresenting what I said,
No,
because
you're saying I'm not.
I've already told you that based on the economic data that's coming out, we wouldn't even get relief in inflation until after the elections, and the oil prices
Right.
have to stick low to even see that inflation come down
I know,
even
but we
after
will
the
see
elections. It
lower.
was
We
coming
will
more
see
like
lower.
December.
According to the president, who you think says everything, no matter what he switches or not accurately, he thinks oil prices and gas prices will be down, and so does the Secretary of Energy of the
No, no, no.
Treasury says
You
oil
you
prices will
completely
be down where they were in 3 weeks or months.
you missed what I just said to you. Inflation is not just going to the pump today and seeing that
I
the
agree.
gas
Inflation's
prices
not
drop
going to drop
70%.
overnight. Inflation's not going to drop
The
overnight.
actual economic pain that people are feeling, if you would have to have oil prices at between 70 and $75 or 70 to 80 bucks a barrel for them to feel it through the inflationary pressures, through food pressures, and through supply chains and all of
I
that.
agree with you.
You're not going to see any of it until after the election.
I agree with you,
It's going to be
but
December, maybe even January
I know.
before they would even feel the
Landy,
effects.
Landy, Landy, I don't know if you're just trying to win the argument, or I think
No,
you're such a smart.
I'm not
Okay,
arguing.
but
I'm
but
making points.
superficial things win elections all the time. George Dukakis riding in a tank and not looking like a fucking idiot damaged him so badly, and that was pre-social media. Like, perception is almost 80% in politics and in elections. The perception of high gas prices impacts people more than the reality. It's why when Trump
What's
says
the
the economy
percentage?
is all
Okay,
good
so then
underlying things,
quantify your metrics then, because you keep saying this over and over again. David says this too, but you have to quantify your metrics. How many people that voted for Republicans are going to go vote for Democrats because they think
they're
what? They're
not.
going to lower their
They're not.
gas prices?
They're
It's
not.
not going to
They're
happen.
not. They're not. No, they're not going to vote for it. They're just not going to be as passionate to vote. Democrats are going to have more vote. And again, you've got such a huge number of independents that could well vote for Democratic candidates. And certain races will go blue or red based on just where they are, no matter what. But I think there's a chance you're right. Republicans could actually hold on. And the sooner this issue is at least appears to be resolved, even
But
if it's not
I said
forever,
this when the
the
war
better.
was full go. I said this when the war was fully on board. We were still dropping bombs on their heads. I said this when we were still actively fighting them.
All right.
And you're telling me
All right.
now, yes, I think you might have had a point.
I always
But
think you have a point. I just think you don't like to concede any points at all, which is
no, no,
interesting.
no.
You never like to
I
concede anything, but
concede a lot, but there's
I'll concede a
nuance.
lot. I concede a lot. I concede that your analysis is pretty accurate on a whole bunch of things. I think you just dismiss the things you don't like. You just dismiss
No,
Trump
it's not that
saying
I'm
the
not
opposite
dismissing
Monday.
anything. No, 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 no. You're confusing nuance with dismissal. And here's the problem. I spent a lot of time getting to understand that region of the world. All right. And there's a lot of things that I wish I could talk to you on a live about that I can't. But one of the big things that I can tell you is why I said from day one this is not a regime change operation is because the reason why no one ever wanted to tackle this, Rob, and you know it just as well as I do, is because there is no political path, not just here in the United States, but there's no political path that makes sense to go in and do again what we have done in other places before. Because the only
I don't
way to get
disagree.
that
I
regime
don't
out,
disagree.
Rob, you cannot choke them out through economics. You cannot
I
choke them
don't
out through
disagree. I agree. Well,
so
I don't know
so
about that. I don't know if
I,
you couldn't choke them out through economics, but you might need
I
boots on the ground, which we're not
but
going to do.
since
But I don't even know.
January,
I don't even know that we need regime change. I'm not even saying we have to do regime change,
well,
Landy. I want some consistency in what we're doing. And I'm merely
okay,
saying that I don't believe this is a consistent path.
Well, let
You're
me
insisting it is, no matter how many shifts and turns. Maybe you're right.
no.
I don't think you're going to see
Shifts and turns
militarily
happen
going
all the
back in.
time in war. All right, I mean, just look
Yeah.
at the Russian-Ukraine war. Shifts happen all the time.
Andy, I'll
It-
make you a bet that 5 years from now, we still don't have their enriched uranium, and they are still funding terrorist groups and all that. And someone totally else
well,
will be
I'm not.
president, who, as I've said before, won't have the
Look,
balls to go in militarily.
you
This is the
never
only
see.
president that's going in militarily. So after this, no
Here's
one else is
where
gonna,
you know
except
you
Israel.
you've never really asked me what my personal thoughts are. You've asked me what my assessment is, right? If you want my personal thoughts, I agree. You choke them out economically until they give you what you want. But the fact of the matter is, regime change isn't going to happen through bombs on their heads, and it's not going to happen through economic pressures either. Their currency is worthless. They have no markets left. Their people are suffering. They're running out of food. They have nowhere to put their oil. And your contention is keep your foot on the gas. The problem is that that still doesn't get rid of the actual ideological regime. It doesn't. The only way to get rid of them is to go in, boots on the ground, house by house, neighborhood by neighborhood, factory by
I
factory,
get it.
facility by
I'm not.
facility,
I
government
get the
building by
argument.
government building,
Um,
and
um,
kill them.
yeah, I'm
That
not.
is not something
Actually,
anyone wants
my
to do.
contention was whether it eliminates the regime or not. If you suffocate them long enough, you can extract the things you want. Ultimately, you
But
said
you
this is
don't
about
know
getting the
that that
nukes.
isn't what will happen. You're predetermining it.
Like I said, look, we can pick this conversation up in 2 months when we don't have access to the nuke materials, or they say we do, but we don't, and then we don't really have
Well,
it, and then they say, well, they're not really
okay,
letting us
Rob,
in.
let me ask you this then. If IAEA and DOE go in and start to assess the situation, and we're actually in, we have people in Iran. What is your feelings if that does happen? Because I'm
We
not
would have
saying
to. Well,
if, I'm saying if.
they were letting in some inspectors in. They're saying they're going to follow the existing laws and the existing rules and the existing agreements that have been made. If they get, we would have to have unrestricted access to go in at any point of time, anywhere, anytime,
No,
no
no, no.
notice, no
I'm
warning.
asking you a very simple question because I know the nuances just as well as you do. If we have IAEA and DOE go in and assess the material, make a report, and then they agree to start spinning things down and we start obtaining that material, I'm not talking about they just go and they land a plane there and they go and have a few conversations. I'm talking about what the administration has been indicating that they want out of this,
Right.
in terms of meeting a final agreement. If they actually are able to do that, and we actually do extract the nuclear material, what are are you going to be okay with it? Because we're probably still looking at an IRGC theocracy in that country.
I'm not, I mean, I'm going to feel better about it. I mean, I still think they'll use whatever resources they can to rebuild it. It'll take them time. I still think they'll fund, terrorist groups around the world and try to, spew their hate. But ultimately, sure, at least we'd at least kick the can down the road a while, and they wouldn't have access to being able to enrich that material for a little while. That would be good. I
Would
find
you
it hard to
agree?
see that happen.
And I know we've had this conversation before, but do you agree that that extremist ideology is much larger than just Iran?
Oh yeah.
So the reason why I bring this point up is because I don't think that this extremist ideology, this extremist faction of Islam is ever going to go away in our lifetime, whether they are in Iran or not. They
You
will
might be
find a
right.
new home somewhere,
Listen,
right?
you
So
might be right about that.
I here's what would make me happy. Okay, here's what would make me happy is we get inspectors on the ground. We assess what is there, right? And then we begin to spin down and take control of
Right.
that particular material, whether it's by dilution
So
or extraction. That
I
would
would like
that would
that
make
too.
me happier
Right.
than the other alternatives of boots on the ground and fighting
Well, I don't
building by
want to do
building.
boots on the ground either, and I appreciate what you're saying. I think not addressing ballistic missiles is, again, just further proof to me that, and you and I just disagree. If we could have gotten them to put new ballistic missiles on the table, we would have. They are in enough position of power to say, we won't even talk about that. If you want us to talk, we won't even talk about that. That troubles me because they can do a lot of bad shit with that while they're rebuilding their nukes. Again, I think the damage they can do with
This is
ballistic
where
missiles.
I agree with you. On the ballistic missile front, I agree that they should not be allowed to have ballistic missiles. One of the biggest issues and why I brought up that Gulf states are heavily involved in these talks. I mean, they're the ones mediating. This is a
Well,
first.
because they're the ones that are going to get hit by the ballistic missiles first.
I know, but my point is, this kind of goes back to the Abraham Accords, right? Because this is the Gulf states handling their own business, and we have not seen that. This is actually way more historic, I think, than people are making it out to be, because we're so focused on U.S., Israel, Iran, Lebanon, the Houthis, Hezbollah, so on and so forth, because the conversation surrounds that. This is a chance for the Middle Eastern nations to come out with a massive win on their hands if they get to the goal, if they get to the end goal. And this is one of the reasons why internally in Iran, for the regime sympathizers, they hate every part of this. They don't want to see this happen because they had a good thing going. They could play spoiler in any race, in any game. They could play spoiler. And if they get roped in to this US backed Middle Eastern coalition that is now handling themselves, that's insane to them. They don't want to see it. And that's where I think that this is a lot different than prior areas. And that's my main contention, Rob.
We're basically over time, and we can pick it up again. I'm going to leave it on a provocative note, and I want to. We have to set a limit because we didn't get to talk about all the other things that I wanted to talk to you about. More domestic politics, Bitcoin, lots of stuff going on. So we're not going to just do all Iran anymore because we could talk for hours. I'm not saying it's not a good conversation, but I will leave it at this. I don't want anything more than a yes or no. I think the government of Pakistan, the prime minister or president, whatever it is, I think he's a big Iran sympathizer. And I think he kisses ass to the U.S. And I think he's secretly trying to tilt the tables toward him. That's maybe just my paranoid conspiracy theory.
I agree. Yes. I also think that but he's not a hardliner. There was almost a nuclear war, remember, with Pakistan. So,
but I'm just saying, you are fundamentally agree. He's fundamentally, he's going to tell Trump you're great, but he's fundamentally on Iran's side. That's
here's why. But I think
we don't have time for a long answer. I just want a quick. We can pick it up.
I do need to get this out there. I think because he wants to put himself at the table in the leadership position with the rest of the Gulf states. I think he wants some equal footing with his contemporaries in the Gulf states, and I believe that's why. That's all I'll say on that. But Rob, I really appreciate these conversations. I know that we disagree and we kind of go back and forth, but I really do appreciate these conversations.
Me too, and I think it's important to have the conversations with disagreement. We'd all get a whole lot farther if that's what people did. If y'all just talk to people you agree with, then you go nowhere. If you don't talk to people you disagree with, then you really go nowhere. Right?
Pretty much. Well, thank you for having me, Rob.
Andy. I'll see you on Friday. Thanks for coming.
See you on Friday, bud.
Bye-bye.
Meet Rob Nelson, talk show host.
Because you got the 70s thing going there. I got someone's underwear.
Robert Kennedy, thanks for taking a minute. Simple question.
Tucker,
It's good to see you. Listen,
if you're a Bitcoin maximalist, you're Bitcoin forever.
I hate this central bank digital currency.